All right, so let me just, you're not broadcasting yet, right?
I just started. We're live now. It's 1 o'clock.
Oh my, okay. Well, good deal. All right.
So we'll just wait a few minutes here till attendees show up, and then we will get started. So we're populating the list. So welcome everybody, and we'll just start in just a minute. All right, welcome to Penn State Berks LionSide Chats. My name is Ryan Hassler, and I'm one of the 3 LionSide Chat moderators working alongside Don Pfeiffer-Wrights and Sonia De La Cueto. Come on in and welcome to our campus. We are so glad that you could join us today. Before we get started, we wanted to share that you should please feel free to submit questions throughout the entire program via the question and answer feature. For this webinar, we will not be utilizing the raise hand feature today. Once the presentation concludes, we will facilitate a discussion with our presenter. We will also be recording today's session so you can revisit the topic or even share the experience with your friends and family. Now we would like to introduce Professor Jim Shankweiler, who will be speaking on supply chains. Jim has been in the Penn State community for 20 years, teaching management, marketing, supply chains, and CPR. Prior to teaching, he has worked in large, small, and startup enterprises across various industry sectors. So without further ado, we'll turn it over to Professor Jim, and I will invite you now to share your screen, and we are eager to hear about supply chains.
Okay, how's that look, Ryan?
Looks good. We're ready to go.
All right. Well, thanks for inviting me to do this, and want to thank Dawn and Ryan and Sonia and Trevor, who is the person there with the lifeline. But thank you for pulling this together. I think this is just an exceptional series. And thanks to those of you who are joining us. You put off your trip to the shore. Maybe you're already down at the shore and you're calling the family out of the water. I don't know how that is, but it looks like my camera is on the wrong. So pardon me with a little technical adjustment. This is dangerous. Trevor, don't go away. That work? Okay, good. And you'll note as well, in case you're curious, that scene behind us is the inside of a pharmaceutical manufacturing facility. So we'll be talking about that because, of course, we are talking about supply chain and specifically COVID-19, supply chain and disruption. And I mean, we can approach this kind of shortage of toilet paper and the like, but all the time that I go through this and I'm thinking about supply chain, I just need to pause and make sure that I'm putting some thought into, as of today, 130,000 lives, including, I just saw a few minutes ago, one of our own, a student at University Park. 130,000 lives, and I'm really mindful of the fact that, well, extended family, so maybe there are 8 people, just a number, 8 people who are affected by that, but I'm always taken by the fact that our students are really profoundly affected when a grandmother or a grandfather passes away. So 130,000, we don't take our view off of that, even if we're talking about kind of the mundane aspects of supply chain. And Also be thinking about the 17.8 million people who are out of work. Now that number came down significantly today in the report that was released today, but 17.8 million. And the data show that 49% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Paycheck to paycheck. And they may have been out of work since the middle of March. How many paychecks would have been in there? So along with just that number of 17.8 million, you think of just the emotional toll, the family toll, the mental toll, the not meaning to bring anybody down with this, because we're going to get into talking about supply chain, but I think it's really important at the offset to remember kind of the behind the scenes piece of this. So let's jump in. Well, what do I want to do? I want to be talking about supply chain performance over the last 3-4 months. And, certainly, we've all become painfully aware of supply chain. We may not have thought about it before, but we're aware of it now. And we think back, and some of it was cute, perhaps, at the beginning. Couldn't find toilet paper, couldn't find paper towels, couldn't find alcohol wipes and the like. Got to be annoying, got to be scary. So we'll start talking about supply chain. And what really fascinates me about this is that it is incredibly complicated. There are just so many linkages in supply chain that just my love of aha learning kind of got me fascinated by all of this. I was first taken by it when I was a consultant and I was working it with M&M Mars. And at the time, M&M Mars owned Calcan, the dog food, now Whiskas and all that sort of stuff. But they manufactured the dog food in California, in their headquarters out there, put it in the can, pressurize it, put it on the truck to get it to the Midwest. When they'd open the door of the truck in the Midwest, they'd see that there was dog food splashed all over the walls. What the heck has happened here? Well, it turned out it was a matter of pressurization and can strength not being adequate. Well, can strength not being adequate when that tractor trailer went across the Rocky Mountains. The cans exploded, and just the intricacies of all of this. And so we can be talking about there's no toilet paper on the shelves, but all of the bits and pieces that go into this, I think you'll be amazed, but you can't understand how some of this in its complexity just goes wrong. I was impressed when I was, as a professor of supply chain, this is like perfect. I love to find things in the newspaper that relating to concepts that we've talked about in class. Every day there's something in the Wall Street Journal that is related to supply chain. Dropping gasoline demand fuels higher prices for soda and beer. What? The restaurant owner is paying 25% more for the carbon dioxide that's going into the beer that he's selling. 24% the carbon dioxide. Goes on to explain carbon dioxide is a byproduct of ethanol, which by federal mandate is mixed with gasoline to help it burn more cleanly. Fewer people are driving because of lockdowns, so the demand of gasoline has plunged, and the ethanol plants then are closing, so we don't have our carbonation. It's just a fascinating topic. So we can go through some of this, but there's a bigger issue here, and it is, why is this happening? And I want everyone to put on their critical thinking hats. In my view, this isn't just a matter of opening up the plants and getting the trucks back on the road. And there may be a systemic issue here that we need to be solving. And come on, critical thinkers, this isn't just about, let's get back to normal. I look back over the last 4 months, and there are 3 words that come to mind: surprise, displacement, and disruption. We're not going to talk too much about the first 2, and none of this, I'm not bringing any politics into this, and we're not, this won't be a bash on capitalism, and let's just talk about the facts here. Surprise that how could we miss it when epidemiologists have been telling us for however many years that it's not a matter of if a pandemic will come, but it's a matter of when the pandemic will come. Displacement. 17.1 million people now out of work. And throughout all of this, we're talking about sustainability. We want to have a sustainable economy. How about this as a sustainable workforce, that 17 million people are now out of it? And the third one being disruption. Yeah, certainly there is supply chain disruption, and we'll be focusing in on that. But surprise, how could we have missed this? Displacement. How could we, with all of our fine manufacturing and logistics and the like, have just out on the streets like that? And disruption. A short-term focus. And business people have been accused of having a short-term focus for decades now. And we do. We are thinking about what's the stock price going to be 2 weeks from now, and what are our quarterly financials going to be. We are always thinking short-term. And this is kind of a matter of, well, the surprise piece of it and the displacement piece of it and this disruption all coming about, I'm suggesting to you, because we are taking a short-term focus. So let's get everybody back to work, get everybody healed, but we also have to take a look at how our processes, specifically in this case, supply chain processes, are working. All right. So what we're going to be doing here, and I was just talking about my delight in supply chain, but remembering what's above the fold here. Found the enemy, and they are us. Is it that we have a short-term focus? Well, I'll talk a bit about how organizations are born, because that really is the key to how our supply chains are then built. We'll take a look at some of the elements in the supply chain, and then we'll drill down a little bit to the components in the supply chain. And I use the term Gazintus because in the supply chain world, well, in Westinghouse, where I was part of the combustion turbine division, we always referred to the Gazintus, and the Gazintus are the things that goes into other things, and that's a big deal. We'll have someone manufacturing a ventilator, and there are other people who are providing product to them, and other people who are providing to the people who are one level above. Let's remember what we saw here and what we didn't see in our supply chains. And then, of course, we have to talk about vaccines, and that's the big deal now. All right. pardon me for kind of getting back to the basics, but this is really key for us, and it's key for our societal thinking now. And perhaps in this whole pandemic world, we are perhaps affected by the way we have chosen to grow our businesses. And yeah, you have to admire my artwork a little bit that I have. Okay, we're growing. Okay, sorry about that. First thing, we can build. What do I want my business to be? I want to have my business be based on quality. I'm going to make Godiva chocolates. I'm going to be making Tiffany jewelry. I want to have it sell because it is of the greatest quality. Or perhaps I want to have a product that is innovative. Apple, some of the technology. People buy it because it is innovative, or perhaps it is customer responsiveness. Once upon a time, if you were purchasing a Dell computer, you'd go online and you'd click, I want to have this kind of a motherboard, and I need to have this much storage and that much, and they'd make it just the way you wanted it and send it out to you. Yeah, I can grow a good business that way. And incidentally, in the retailing world, we're going into a period here where it is about personalizing product. And so we, for example, buy some Cokes and the Coke would have your name on the can. Well, they weren't making it just for you, but they were making it for all the Jameses out there, all the Sonias out there, and customized to the particular customers. And then low price. We are now in a low price economy. Kind of came about when it was globalization and we were making product, but now you could buy product that was made overseas. And instantly, one of the things that really spurred that along was the development or an introduction of the container boxes that go on ships, because that allowed mass amounts of product to come overseas to us. But we got into, and now it is, where's the lowest price? Where's the lowest price? How can I get a price lower than this other retailer who's going to sell something to me? And you can just kind of think ahead to that low price. What is the impact of that on supply chain? Well, it's pretty clear. Everything along the line in supply chain, we have tried to push out the costs. We need to get the product to the customer, very low price, and we also need to get it to them fast. Next day delivery. Next day delivery and incredibly low price. Well, you're just reasoning through that and you think, well, someone's taking a hit on that. And actually Amazon found that to be true, that they were getting one-day delivery, but they were getting costs that was associated to that. In any case, we are in this low price world now. And you really need to, after all said and done, kind of sit on the log and think, is that the best long-term strategy? All right, so we are going to be low price, and we implement our strategy. Are we going to be a high quality product? Are we going to be an innovative product? Are we going to be, if I'm going to be a high quality product, Tiffany's, I'm not just going to put this jewelry into a regular old brown cardboard box. I'm going to give it I think it's a blue box with a gray box with a blue ribbon. I mean, it looks really classy, but that's kind of expensive. Low price, we are implementing it through our supply chain. And what do we want our supply chain to do? The 6 rights. Have to get the right product, right quality, the right time, and oh, by the way, I need it tomorrow. The right price. Oh yeah, if I can find it somewhere cheaper, I'll go to them. At the right price, at the right quantity. And you think all of the demands there, all of the demands on the people who are managing supply chain, and I need to do that and come out of it making a low price strategy work. All right, so let's just a schematic, a supply chain, just to see some of the pieces here, but I want you to be thinking about, all right, yeah, we have all these little feet, but you spread these out across the globe, because we found out that we can make our supply chains really long if we can get the manufacturing or the raw materials from China, a low-cost provider. We have a better chance of having a low-price product to be offering our customer. So now this supply chain is going all the way around the world, and you think about the complications that that may pose on getting the right product to the right place at the right time. You take a look at your iPhone, for example, and iPhone has suppliers on 6 continents, 43 countries. And the same component can be made by a long list of companies out there. Well, back to the 43 countries, some of the countries are conflict countries. We're getting 80 different elements from the periodic chart. Some of it's being mined in conflict countries. We have rare earth metals. Rare earth metals are really important for connectivity and all of the things that make our handheld electronics little handheld miracles, if you will. And we have suppliers, and we have the organizations that are fabricating, and we're putting it on ships and planes and trains and the like, and it goes into warehouses and it gets manufactured or assembled and the like back into warehouses. Now, obviously, there are different tweaks on all of this, but you're getting the same, you're getting the idea of how many different players there are in this. Boeing had to stop the 735 MAX production when it had the 2 fatal air crashes. They have 600 suppliers, and each of their suppliers had multiple subcontractors. So you think of what are the impacts down through that whole tree? And actually, if it would come to trying to trace a defective part, boy, that network that you have to make your way through. Walmart here has 120 SKUs, stock keeping unit, the different unique products on the shelves. You think of 120,000 SKUs, and they're coming from different companies in different countries and by different mechanisms. Some have to come by truck, some come by ship, some are refrigerated, some aren't refrigerated, and just the complexity that goes along with that. I think one of my aha moments here, when all's said and done, is we were getting laptops from China, and the supply of laptops stopped because people in China were ill and in lockdown, just as our students and the students of another 4,299 universities and all of those high schools were going into distance learning. And you just, oh my goodness, the intricacies of making this work. Well, it doesn't stop there, because overlaying all of this is we have different technologies, and it's not like there's one technology that spans this whole, it's different companies have different technologies and they're not necessarily tied together. Networking, relationships from one company to another, really important. We have different laws and standards and cultures. There was a show on Netflix about an American family that was then, or an American factory that was then purchased by a Chinese company. And that was a matter of really a clash of cultures. Sustainability, we're all talking about sustainability. And overarching all of that then is we are to be a low cost provider. Just a word here about sustainability, that we are trying to make our supply chains sustainable. We're trying to aid people, and we're trying to preserve the planet. But there's an inherent flaw right here in that if I have a C Corp, and the big organizations are all C Corps, that's their structure, their articles of incorporation state that their number one responsibility is to their shareholders. Their number one responsibility. And in a world where it is short-term focus, how can I get my stock price to be higher? It kind of tilts this whole thing in the direction of low cost, maximize value. Well, let's complicate this a little bit. And all of this, I hope you're thinking about all of this when it comes to the toilet paper and all of the different factors that come into play. Well, not only do we have a supply chain that is working forward, we're mining we're getting the raw materials and we're manufacturing them and putting them in warehouses, but we have a reverse supply chain as well. It goes in the opposite direction, and this is getting to be a really significant part of supply chain now. And these are the people who are, well, you go to Lowe's and you get a fan and it's broken. You take it back to Lowe's perhaps. But you didn't have the box anymore, so you just take the fan back and take it back to Lowe's and they put that in their back room. Different ways that we're returning product, but some of it goes into, some of it's sent back directly and some of it's going into the store where it's the same chain, or some of it's being returned to another chain and the like. For November and December, online sales were $138 billion and the returns totaled $41.6 billion. So what happens is we want to have a supply chain that's working very effectively in the forward direction, but we have this backwash in the reverse direction that complicates things. I was intrigued by this idea of bracketing, and bracketing for an online sale is, I want to buy a shirt. I don't know if I'm a size 14. But I'll go out and buy online a 14 and a 15. Now maybe it's a 13. So I'll buy 3 shirts and I'll try them on. And then I'm returning the 13 and the 15. And so there, it's not only is it one product that needs to go back through that reverse supply chain, but it may be 2 products for each one that I purchased. there is out there a COVID-15 event. And just as you've heard of the freshman 15, well, there is a COVID-15 where through isolation, through hunkering down, lockdown, we are gaining 15 pounds, and we're going out now to the internet and purchasing the apparel that we think we need, although we're not sure we need that size. We'll get 2 other sizes. And online sales, in its beauty and its convenience, next day has real implications on the efficiency of the supply chain. And maybe you're one. Consumers, they find out now, are holding, well, about 60% of the consumers who were surveyed said that they're holding on to something that needs to go in the opposite direction. All right, let's just kind of dig in here too, and I have to be mindful of my time, but this is not our first toilet paper shortage. We have to talk about the consumer here. This isn't our first toilet paper shortage, and in fact, for those of you who are of a, well, just let it go at that. 1973 was a year of shortage because we had an oil embargo. Gas lines, but also manufacturers who weren't able to get the raw materials that they were needing. And there was a federal representative, name is Froelich, and he lived in a district that had lots of trees in Wisconsin. And he realized that there was a drop-off in the number of bids to provide toilet paper to troops and diplomats. And so then he issued a press release, and the U.S. may face a serious shortage of toilet paper within a few months. We hope we don't have to ration toilet tissue. And the press went crazy. Well, Johnny Carson heard that. And for those of you who don't know, Johnny Carson was a really popular talk show host at the time. He had an audience of 20 million people. And he said on his show, you know, we've got all kinds of shortages these days, but have you heard the latest? I'm not kidding. I saw it in the paper. There's a shortage of toilet paper. And that set the spark. And there was a run on toilet paper, and there was no toilet paper available for the next 4 months. Just that word. And so now we're going through it again, and you think, how the heck did this happen? Well, there's no shortage of toilet paper from the production side of things. It becomes a distribution issue. And that's because we kind of panic here and we think, what happens if I can't buy some and I go out and buy more than I need, and it just kind of builds on itself. But it's really, I don't know if we have any behavioral psychologists out there, but it is interesting that human beings recognize and copy expressions of others. And that can go all the way back to a 1-year-old. Our facial expressions kind of set our emotions, and our body response then is in keeping with our emotions. And we're reading other people who are looking distressed in the supermarket, and we're kind of, okay, now I'm panicking, and we go out there to surround ourselves with things that give us comfort. March 11th, who declared, World Health Organization declared the pandemic. 2 days later, the US declared a national emergency. And by the end of the day, toilet paper sales have been up 734%. Been short ever since. So you think, well, we have behavioral issues and distribution issues that are kind of at the root of this. And it's the psychology. From a toilet paper perspective, that's not the only issue. Remember about that sustainability? Well, there has been pressure on the Toilet Paper Association of manufacturers to back off in using virgin pulp trees, and rather to be putting more emphasis on using recycled pulp in making paper products. Well, and so there are a good number of products out there that are made with this recycled pulp. And so maybe the recycled pulp was going to go in this direction to commercial customers, but then we had a shortage on the consumer side, but you can't give that commercial toilet paper to the consumers, one, because it's not soft enough, and two, the rolls are too large. We just couldn't repackage it quickly enough. So we can have product being distributed in one direction, but it can't necessarily be shifted over to another. The restaurants closed, but they couldn't necessarily take that food that would have been going to the restaurants and take it to a food line somewhere. Well, there is the issue of perishability, but there's also the issue of packaging of it and the like. So it's not as easy as just taking it from one channel and moving it over to other channel. There are lots of considerations. It's not all interchangeable. All right, real quickly here. Transportation, was it part of the solution, or was it part of the problem? 50,000 vessels at sea per day. And you think about all of the coordination that goes on. Well, ocean freight isn't really the best when it comes to having to get the product really quickly from China, but that would have met our needs for some of the hard goods and the like. What's happening in the ocean freight? Well, they're concerned about pollution that these 50,000 vessels at sea are creating, and about 3% of the atmospheric pollution is due to ships. So there was a program out there where they're going to switch out the engines, make them more fuel efficient. It was going to cost $50 billion a year for the next 10 years. I just saw in the paper last night that that's been put on hold. They also wanted to reduce the speed of the ocean liners because there's some very serious injury to whales. And if you look at the sustainability side of this, yeah, we want to be sustaining ocean life. Piracy crept up. Piracy crept up in the first quarter. And it crept up because they believe it was on a downward slide, but it crept up because they're believing that governments were trying to focus on handling the pandemic. And in doing that, they took their view away from their ships at sea. I can say I have a son who imports product from China. And now this was last year, but there would be a ship that was coming from China, and it would wait out there for another 3 ships that were coming in the direction of the United States, so that there was going to be some safety in numbers. There is delay that's just naturally built into all of this. Well, passenger flights were canceled, 90%. What was the impact on the supply chain? The need to get it there quickly products, and that's meds and meds equipment and foods and the like, goes by passenger aircraft, goes in the cargo hold. But when the number of flights was decreased by 90%, there was no way to get product onto those passenger flights. Warehouses, We designed them to maximize speed. Remember, we didn't want to have a whole lot of inventory sitting around in there. You got to keep it moving fast. We don't want to pay for storage costs. We don't want to pay maximum for insurance and the like. We also didn't want to be paying for things that were just sitting out there in reserve. And so you put it through one door of the warehouse and then out the other door. If you're interested, this is all the airplanes in the United States at a particular moment yesterday. Now, airplanes haven't made up that whole 90% that had dropped away. So you can imagine that it's much more complex than that. You want to see ships at sea? That's what ships at sea look like. From a logistics standpoint, the complications of tracking this and when it's going to get there, and is there something that's going to be happening perhaps that's going to be causing a delay? Absolutely. Manufacturers, delays there as well. Well, we were seeing it when everyone was first sent out, and then we tried to bring staff back, but that didn't necessarily go all that well. Some of our suppliers had products that were banned for export, and other countries also have product that is banned for export. One of the things that's being attacked right now is that there is too much product variety, and they refer to it as, if you're thinking of a bell-shaped curve, you have these really long ends on it. They have products, but they don't sell all that much. And so now what you're going to see when you're going to the grocery store is less variety. They're trying to trim the edges of those curves. Mattel, of course, you remember, manufactures toys. They had more than 500 shades of red for their products. Well, think of the logistics nightmares of inventorying 500 different shades of red and transporting shades of red. So we're going to see a lot of that trimming of the ends. One of the difficulties in manufacturing too is the difficulty in monitoring lower level suppliers. And we were seeing examples of that. Oh, I can't remember when, but maybe it was 2013 when there was a horrific fire in a garment factory in Bangladesh. One of the difficulties is that a manufacturer will have its own requirements that it wants to impose on its lower level suppliers, but it doesn't have enough people to be able to go out there and inspect to see that the lower level suppliers are in compliance. Been hearing a lot about the difficulty in getting employees now due to high unemployment compensation benefits. Trucks were really in a precarious position in this pandemic. Before the pandemic started, the tariffs were going to come along. And so firms went out there and bought product in advance of the tariffs. And so truckers, that was a field day for them. There was just a lot of product coming over, transporting it in and putting it in warehouses, and trucking companies went out there and bought trucks and hired drivers. Then the pandemic came along. Now they had all these trucks and they couldn't fill them. And the difficulty too of, we don't have all of that many companies that are operating out there. And so a truck would load and it would drive out to San Diego and it'd drop off its load, but it would have nothing that it could pick up and bring back this way. So there were a lot of trucks that were driving not filled, and that's really expensive. This, incidentally, is a map of conflict around the world to different degrees. But think of the supply chain and think of all the transportation that is going on in the supply chain and how you need to be navigating around these areas of greatest conflict.
Hi, Jim. We're just going to do a 2-minute warning just so that we can get
Okay,
some questions
all right.
in, okay?
Gotcha. Yep.
Thanks.
Sorry to hold everybody
No,
up.
you're good.
American industry stepped up. A pen company is making 75,000, 100,000 face shields a week. Honda and Dynaflow pairing together, and they're making compressors that are going to be used in ventilators. It was really encouraging to see all of these companies that had stepped up. We get to the disposables, the medical supplies. The American Heart Association estimates that we'll need 960,000 ventilators. We have 170,000 on hold. Many of them are broken. Sometime over the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping to make my way into one of those national supply houses where all of our emergency equipment is supposed to be. It'd be interesting to know how much inventory we really have out there. But huge demand for ventilators. And then wonder what I do with the ventilators if I happen to be the hospital after the coronavirus has passed. Wonder what I do with that. Well, look at a ventilator here. 1,500 parts, 100 suppliers, 14 countries, the coordination that needs to get on with this. I think of the supply chain not only in carrying product, but also in getting the employees that we need. They're pushed to the limit. At one point, I owned an ambulance company, and back to that low price, we have people who earn, call it an unsustainable wage. And what we'd find is that if someone was making $15 an hour, to make ends meet, they'd go out and get a second job. And so now they'd be working 2 jobs. And I became aware of this study that said after about 12 hours and 20 minutes of work, the error of risk for medical personnel rises significantly. Now, if I'm thinking supply chain, I also need to be thinking about the people who are being used here to work. Medicines, an area of concern for us. We're low price. We get a lot of our medications from India, in turn gets their medications from China. You see the numbers there. That's not a very reliable chain there. Just in 2020, right before the pandemic started, there was disruption in medication because of the Lunar New Year. Actually, there was a similar disruption back in 2008 when China had a blue sky initiative. The Olympics were going to be taking place, and they asked factories not to be producing so that the skies could be clearer for all of the visitors that were going to be coming to visit China. Vaccines, important thing to keep in mind. Yeah, we're working on 5 of them now, but we're going to need medical vials and we're going to need stoppers. 1 to 2 doses of vials of medication, perhaps, made out of glass. There is a global shortage of sand. Well, there's plenty of sand out there, but it's not necessarily the right kind of sand to be making glass. we're going to need more manufacturing facilities, $70 million to $700 million per facility. You know, all these medical vials and syringes and the like as well. And we also need adjuvants that are ingredients that go in and boost immune response. This is a tree that is grown in Chile. It can be harvested from November to January, and it makes the, I won't try the pronunciation here, but this is the tree. It has the bark that is needed to make adjuvants. You see all
Professor Shankweiler,
Yep.
we have a couple of questions that came in. I'm sorry, I don't want to
All
cut
right.
you off.
Go ahead.
But I just wanted to get to one of the questions that came in from our audience today was, do you think that there could be another toilet paper shortage if a second wave happens?
Well, honestly, I do. I don't know that of all the people out there who hoarded, kind of had this light and said, oh my goodness, look how I messed things up. Maybe it's going to be a toilet paper shortage, or maybe it's going to be some other product, but it becomes, I'm not all that popular, but it becomes, what is the product that gives me comfort? Just as you have a tough day, you go home and you get a pint of ice cream and 2 spoons and you sit there and it's comfort food. So is it going to be toilet paper? But yes, I believe that we will have a shortage perhaps of toilet paper or some other product.
Anything's possible, right?
Well, yeah, and that's the whole deal where we don't necessarily know what's coming.
So earlier you were talking about the transition from commercial to consumer. Who or what would be the mechanism to like pivot the manufacturing quicker the next time that something like this would happen? Like
one of the shortfalls,
how would that happen?
Well, one of the shortfalls in supply chain is that there isn't a czar, if you will, who coordinates all of that. So that's probably the marketing department that's making that decision of, all right, we have a shortage over here. Can we transition some of this product that was going to be going to XYZ and get it out there? But there's no czar who's looking out for all of this. Several weeks ago, you were hearing about the need for ventilators, and New York was trying to buy ventilators, and so they'd be putting in bids, and Arizona was trying to buy ventilators, and it was very decentralized. And it turned out that each of the states was negotiating against the other states, and the federal government was in on that too. And so there needs to be this comprehensive, how do we make this work efficiently and equitably? But I think before we even do that, we need to get back to, well, what are the quote unquote rules that we're going to follow? You know, like where are the priorities going to be, if you will?
Sure.
It was great that so many of those manufacturers stepped forward, and there was a lot of reluctance for manufacturers to step forward unless they knew where the money was going to be coming from, because it took them big bucks to ramp up to be making ventilators. And then after the pandemic would be over, it would take big bucks to ramp down and get back into making automobiles or whatever. And so there was some delay in getting funding, and a lot of it came from the government, getting funding to kind of make that transition.
Sure.
So
we have another question just came in. What resources would you say modern supply chains rely on the most?
Well, I'll show you right here, and what you're going to be seeing. We're going to be trying to digitize data, and we want to be resilient. And so it's instead of going to China, we're going to have some options where instead of buying from China, we can buy from Vietnam and Korea and some other sources. But a lot of the work now is being done on digitalization, artificial intelligence, automation, warehouse automation, and we are throwing, in my opinion, we are throwing technologies at this, but I see, taking a longer view, that there are some serious consequences to that. I'm very concerned about the sustainability of the workforce. What happens when we have automated so much of this, and now we have people who were employed who are either employed but perhaps not at a sustainable wage or not employed at all? I'm worried about, we're approaching this from the standpoint of, let's put technologies at this. That's kind of the first gun in the holster. Let's throw technologies at this and make all of this work faster and smoother and more visibly, rather than looking for the more long-term sustainable solutions with it.
Sure. So we have one more question, and then we're going to wrap up our session, our LionSide chat today.
And I'm sorry to keep you all.
Oh, you're perfect. We're still good. It's before 2 o'clock, Jim. We're all good. The last question is, do cheap products really pay off in the long run, mainly when we are also concerned about sustainability?
Say that again, please.
Sure. Do cheap products really pay off in the long run, mainly when we are also concerned about sustainability?
Well, I think we can find, right? I think we can say that we have become a throwaway society. I could have taken my TV out there and gotten it fixed, but heck, it was only $100 to get a new one, and so I'll throw that one in the pile and I'll go out and get a new one. And really has become it's become a throwaway society, and it's become very gadgetish. We have to wrestle with sustainability, because I think in the short-term view, we can't necessarily see that. That's on the other side of a wall.
Great. Well, we just wanted to thank Professor Shankweiler today for chatting with us. So thank you, Jim, about supply chains. It actually filled in a lot of questions that I had. Just yesterday, I tried to purchase ink from Staples, and they had none of the ink that was on the shelf. And I was curious. I said to the cash register, or to the woman working the cash register when I checked out, I said, I didn't know ink was a hot commodity. And her response was, we haven't had a shipment from China in 3 months. So so this just kind of sheds some more light on that. So I appreciate, your talk with us. Thank you. We also would like to thank our tech tutor, Trevor, for standing by in case we had any technical difficulties. And then also a special thank you to all of you for joining us for today's LionSide chat. As you click out of our webinar, you will receive access to a survey. Please take a few minutes required to complete that survey to let us know what your thoughts are about today's chat, and perhaps offer some ideas for things that you would like to see in the future. You're encouraged to reach out to us via email, and we remind you to keep checking our website, as we are always adding new chats. So our next chat, let me actually show you our lineup for our next chat. Our next chat is scheduled for, I believe it is Monday, July 6th at 10 a.m. College Life, Balancing Social and Academic Involvement. Actually, a Penn State Berks student will be presenting that chat. So be sure to come back soon, meet with another faculty, staff, or student from Penn State Berks to share their experiences. Have a great 4th of July weekend, and stay safe, Berks and beyond. Signing off until next time, this has been the Penn State Berks LionSide Chat.